This episode is brought to you by Kanye West and his inspirational quote, "See what I want so much, shit never hurt this bad, never did this before, that's what the virgin says, we've been generally warned, that's what the surgeon says, God talk to me now, this is an emergency."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people.
Hello, my people! ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. This episode with Kim McPherson was a therapy session, my friends. Kim McPherson is an Eft Tapping therapist and specializes in weight loss, emotional eating, and trauma release therapy. I don't think I've ever shared this here, but I've battled with body image issues. I know this sounds pretty weird, but hear me out. I think a lot of us do, but we just don't know. I mean, growing up my entire life, and even now, I've always associated chubby or fat with bad and skinny with good, which obviously is not always the case. I feel like if I gain weight, I immediately have a loss of self-worth, and this isn't healthy. I've had to really focus over my life, especially now, to detach my self-worth from my weight. And you may look at me and you're like, what do you mean? Like, you run, you don't appear overweight, how have you battled with this? Well, I think you will really enjoy this episode. Kim's 6 and 12-week programs are designed to help stop emotional eating through the most powerful tools using modern psychology. She works with clients to reprogram their limiting beliefs about themselves and their body so they can lose weight without cutting calories or depriving themselves of the food they love. Her mission is to help clients overcome their lifelong struggles with food, to break through subconscious weight loss blockers by reprogramming your brain so you can finally gift yourself and stick to a self-care wellness lifestyle. What makes Kim's story even more awesome is that she's an ex-ICU nurse from Australia. She shares that her lifelong journey overcoming adrenal burnout, emotional overeating, and weight loss blocks led to her to quit her job in Australia and move to, ladies and gentlemen, drumroll, Mexico. She quit her job in Australia and moved to Mexico. She's now living her dream out of Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And as such, if the sound quality of this episode is not perfect the entire time, well, now you know why. Because she's in the middle of Puerto Vallarta on a beach town in Mexico. I wish I was there. My friends, she's a therapist. She's spiritual. She's not scared of crazy animals because she's Australian. Enjoy this episode with Kimila McPherson like I know you will. In 3, 2, 1. Go. Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast. I have here with me the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable, Australia's incredible nomad, Australia to Mexico, Kimila McPherson. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm wonderful, Stephan. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm great.
Before we started, I was practicing your name, and I'm not sure if I butchered it. Is it Kimila?
Perfect. Kimila
McPherson. Okay. Everything in Australia is pronounced differently, so if you hear some mispronunciations, it's just because I'm from Costa Rica in Canada, different accents. But thank you so much for being here. I always tell my guests why I invited them to the podcast. And you were referred to by our friend Diana, who is also a nomad. Maybe that's why you guys get along. Both of you get along. I'm a nomad myself. I've lived in like 4 or 5 different countries, so maybe that's why we're doing this as well. First of all, I really admire
you for the courage of moving from Australia to Mexico, dropped everything there, moved to Mexico to follow your dreams. You're in Puerto Vallarta right now. You deal with the topics of weight loss that I'm passionate about. You're going to hear my story pretty soon because it's in the family. Emotional eating, trauma release therapy, and everything that I love, because it deals with abstract things that we can't really touch, but they do affect our lives immensely. So let's start with that. How and why did you decide, after 9 years of being a nurse, big part of that in the ICU in Australia, did you decide to drop everything there and say, hey, this is my dream. I'm leaving and I'm going to Mexico, Puerto Vallarta. First of all, what was the dream and why Puerto Vallarta?
Yeah, well, great question. I always kind of had this dream of living somewhere differently. I love Australia. I love everything it has to offer. But there was just something in the back of my mind or in my heart that I knew that I needed to go traveling, do some more things. I had also lived in London for 3 years. And during that time, I never really felt like I was home there.
Yeah.
And then came over to Puerto Vallarta in 2014 for the first time. And what brought me over here was doing some yoga training. I knew one girl that was here. She was kind of friends with my cousin, met her a couple of times, just like, yeah, come over. I'm doing my yoga training here. And I was like, wow, I wanted to do my yoga training somewhere overseas. And it's very common for everyone in Australia to do it in like India or Bali. So the thought of doing it here in Mexico was really intriguing for me. So I came over, I was 7 weeks here, and I remember getting off. I actually caught the bus from Mexico City, and I arrived, I got off the bus and I just felt like I was at home. It was just the weirdest kind of feeling because I was 30 something and I was like, wow, like this is the first time I've felt home, which is such an odd feeling to just feel that instantaneously. So I did my yoga training. I was here for 7 weeks. And at that time, I was still working as a nurse in Australia and ran out of money. I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to support myself? I know I want to do this, but I wasn't sure how. So I went back to Mexico, back to Australia and continued working as a nurse. But then I started this like a business on the side in a network marketing company. So I did really well with that. I got my goal. I reached my goal for a certain amount of money coming through each week to be able to move back. So 6 months after I arrived in Australia, I moved back to Mexico and Puerto Vallarta. And that was 6 years ago. So that was, just one of the biggest, blessings of my life that I was able to do that. And I kept kind of, I was writing down all of these manifesting things, like writing down my ideal day. And I also did a lot of meditation when I was still working as a nurse on night shift in the ICU. And I would like listen to these meditations and picture myself on the beach and picture myself here and living my life. I'm like, well, how am I going to do this? And it took a lot of like changing my subconscious beliefs about, can I do this? Can I kind of break the mold? Everyone wants me to stay and be a nurse and follow that path of like all the things that the majority of society do. But I knew that my heart was here and I knew that there was part of me that was called, like Mexico was calling me back. So, yeah.
That is fascinating. I am agnostic and I don't really know how I feel about the concept of my past life or whatever. But we were just talking with my mom and my brothers the other day. My brother is seeing a therapist in Costa Rica, and she said that blah, 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 because in your past life, blah, 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 but like as a matter of fact, and we were like, man, she's like very respected here. And like, if she's saying it like that, maybe there is something. Just because I don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe you had something in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, in Jalisco. Puerto Vallarta is in Jalisco, right? I've been there because my uncle, whose birthday is today, Uncle Armando, if you're listening to this, I doubt it, but if you're listening to happy birthday, he lives in Guadalajara. So we've been to Puerto Vallarta many times when I lived in Mexico. And hey, you never know. Maybe you grew up in Jalisco, in Guadalajara, in Puerto Vallarta, and because a lot of things we can't explain. And if you felt like that, I am so supportive of pursuing it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's like the feeling, and some people like, oh, it's so like, our conscious mind can kind of override that feeling that we get.
Yeah.
Like, that's silly. You're never going to be able to stay over there. You'll be back working as a nurse, asking for your old job back. And so that feeling, like that kind of, like trusting that feeling is really powerful, and trusting something that doesn't necessarily make sense, but feels good. You know?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about you, but you have like this like spiritual vibe and like good vibe. And I don't know, I look at you and I'm like, she fucking knows something that I don't. Like, there's something about her that I need to listen. Okay, really good. So you actually look like my brother's ex-girlfriend too, like long time ago. Not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just you actually kind of maybe look like Megan Fox or an artist. I don't know who you look like. Have you been told that or no?
Yeah, some of the ones with dark hair. There's another one, I can't remember, Rebecca someone. She's an actress. Someone told me that once.
A lot of Rebeccas. You also have like a Angelina Jolie vibe. Like, I know, again, like, you know something that I don't. So here we go. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. So basically, you have 6 and 12-week programs that are designed to help stop emotional eating using the most powerful tools in modern psychology. But here's where it gets good. You work with clients to reprogram their limiting beliefs about themselves and their body so they can lose weight without cutting calories or depriving themselves of the food they love. So before I go in with the question, I want to tell you my story so you can see where I'm coming from. It'll just take like 60 seconds or whatever. So I grew up in a household, and I'm not throwing shade at my mom because she grew up in a household very similar, and that's why she's like that. My mom, and in my family, fat has always been bad and skinny has always been good. Even though a skinny person may be very unhealthy in physical, mental, emotionally, in many ways. A couple months ago, I started working with a nutritional, like a food nutrition habits coach, pretty much. Her name is Clorofila Vida. Oh, I actually recommended her to you in our email thread. Yeah. Clorofila Vida, she's Colombian in Spain, and it was a 8-week program or 8 sessions where you actually learn which foods are good to like consciously eat. This is what it was for me. Obviously, there's a lot more things, but to me, I realized that because for whatever reason, to me, food was just very transactional. I never had a good relationship with food. I've always, as soon as I feel like a little bit overweight or that I've gained some weight, I get super grumpy. And in many ways, I've attached my self-worth to my body image. And when I go home to see my mom or my dad, I almost feel like I am not, I don't know if these are the right words, but worth the love if I'm fatter. Like, my mom has this thing that we joke around with her, but she's like, all the time still, we kind of grew up with this like fat phobia and body image issues because like she'll always be like, oye, hijito, like, oye, she's Peruvian. She's like, oye, 2.5 kilograms less, and you would look amazing. And I love my mom and I love my dad, and I always want to make them proud. So I always struggle and get super grumpy, angry at myself when I let myself gain weight. And then I feel like, oh, this is not my best version. And I'm probably sucking at running. I run a lot. Or if I play soccer, I'm like, why the fuck would I play soccer if I'm not going to be as good as I can be because I feel overweight? So this program to me was with Clorofila Vida was, it was life-changing, but it gave me so much self-awareness that to me, skinny meant good, fat meant bad, and I never really paid attention to what I ate. And the only reason, one of the biggest reasons why I run is because I don't want to be fat. So I struggle with all these things. I know it gives me like, obviously there's a big component that I know it's good for my health and that it's good for my mind. And because I want to do well at work, I want to be healthy and feel good. I know it makes me feel good. But a big chunk is because I don't want to be fat. And again, I'm not throwing shade at my mom. She's worked on herself as well. And she got that from her mom. And her mom probably got it from her mom. So I don't want to carry that burden anymore. It's exhausting, you know? So now that I've finished my therapy session with you, what do you think? And how do you help people reprogram their limiting beliefs about themselves?
Great story. I love that. And it's a very similar one. It's like similar. So many people have that, and so many people have, because it's kind of like a shame if I don't look a certain way. It might not necessarily be from family. It could be society. It could be for a lot of work, the women that I work with. It's like, if I don't look, skinny, I'm unlovable by men, or unlovable by this. We put so much pressure on people, and which brings up more stress, cortisol in the body, and then you end up with this emotional eating. So I kind of didn't mention it before, but I do the EFT tapping now. So I mentioned that I quit my job as a nurse and I did the network marketing, and the network marketing company it is still a brilliant company. I'm still working for them, but they specialize in weight loss and products and stuff. But what I found was, especially for me, I knew all the things to eat. So you were saying you did this new program where you learned all the things. A lot of people can actually consciously know what to eat, but choose not to eat it because of these subconscious weight loss blockers, and what could be happening with you. There's like the shame around it, but then there's also one of those subconscious weight loss blockers, and this was all taught to me by my teacher, Brittany Watkins. One of them is the rebel. So if you're a rebel growing up, if you had a strict authority figure that told you what to do, so it might not be you, but I'm just speaking in general.
That's my mom's story. That's exactly my mom's story.
This could be it. I'm not saying, we'll have to ask some more questions, but sometimes we would be, if somebody's like an overbearing, critical authority figure, we have this, to a child, and then they ask, the parents might ask the child to go clean your room. You're like, you might say yes, but that inner rebel is like, not doing it. Like I want to do it 3 or 4 hours later, just to spite. So what could be happening now is now that we're the adult, now that you're the adult, I'm the adult, we're our own authority figure. And now we're saying, I want to start this new diet, exercise regime, or even something to do with work. Okay, I'm going to get up half an hour earlier. I'm going to do this morning routine. I'm going to meditate, And then we still have this inner rebel that starts rebelling against us as the adult, as our own authority figure. So that's one of the kind of the weight loss, the subconscious weight loss blockers that I work with my clients. And sometimes they're like, well, this is kind of weird. Like, yeah, I did have that authority but I was never able to stick up to my mum, being a kid. But then they're able to, we can go in. So we use EFT tapping. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And we are tapping on different meridian points in our body and mostly our face. And
what is a meridian point?
it's a different like energy channels in the body. Okay, so the like energy channels, and this is like, it's similar to acupuncture. So acupuncture uses meridian points, which is like, ancient Chinese therapy. And so then you're putting an acupuncture, like the needle, which is a puncture, into the skin, which kind of like does like an unblocking of those energy channels. And so when all of those energy channels are working, that's when we're feeling free. That's when, we might like feeling free and at peace in our body and at ease. So when we're doing this with tapping, it's brilliant therapy because all you need is yourself. You just need your hands. There's something to tap on your face and body with. So it's brilliant. It's that people use it to calm themselves down. Like they've got post-traumatic stress, if they're, for fears, afraid of flying, dog bite or anything. And then the one that I use it with, and also you can use it to energize yourself. If you're feeling a bit low of energy, you can use it to just sparking new energy in yourself, giving like, courage, enthusiasm. And what I work with it is releasing subconscious weight loss blockers. Okay, so that's my specialty. I also do some other stuff, and it's really related to this trauma that you mentioned, like a trauma release, which is a lot of the time like a trauma can just kind of be anything. Like people think of, this big, a car accident or domestic violence in the family or something big happening, but it can be anything. A trauma can be the example that I use a lot is, and this was one for me, like losing your mum in a supermarket for a little girl, like or a little boy. So for that, like consciously, it's like, yeah, whatever, you found her 5 minutes later. But for a child, there's so many things that bubble up because we're so reliant, dependent on our caregiver. So feelings that come up then could be something like rejection, abandonment, loneliness. So then later on in life, when, coming home, living alone or coming home and nobody's around, you're like, I feel a little bit lonely. I feel rejected. I feel abandoned. What can I do to soothe myself? And that's when you start reaching for like the food. But you can also use this for people who smoke, drink, other substances. So whatever you're reaching for to soothe yourself. And you can.
Yeah. A lot of things came to mind when you were talking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that when you have an authoritarian figure at the house, because you have no say in anything, because it's an authoritarian household, you don't feel very seen and heard, and otherwise, and obviously you can't control anything. And when you talk about anorexia or bulimia, it's like, fuck you. I'll control that myself. And in many ways, that's the only thing you can control. And it's just like a vicious cycle because the word is not addictive, but it becomes like a thing that you can't stop eventually. And then the other thing is when you're under a lot of stress or in an situation that you're not very happy, for example, a 9-to-5 job where really it's like a 7 to 8 full-time job and you're a workaholic or you feel like you can't get out of it. When you come home again, you can't control your day, but when you come home, you can control it. So you want to cram in everything that you couldn't do and have a cool hour before you go to bed or a cool 4 hours. And so you eat everything. You eat McDonald's, you eat this, you eat milkshakes, you watch Netflix, you go on Instagram, then you go to bed at 3 a.m. because I hate my job and this is the only time I have for myself. And then you wake up at 6 to do the same thing and you're like, oh, my life sucks. So you're so like, you can't control your day, which is very similar to the authoritarian household. So you end up in these vicious cycles of habits that are not very good for you long term. Is this something that you probably treat as well?
Definitely. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there with like the word control. And, you know, like this is something that we can control. And also with, you know, in the extreme cases with anorexia, bulimia, and also like, so emotionally eating is an eating disorder in its own.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that we, you know, like that you talked about that we can control, but also it's really related to these other little traumas that might have gone on in our life that really, so anytime throughout the day, say something stressful happened at work, and back to the authority figure, and us not being able to speak up, like that's a lot of the stuff that I work with also. So not being seen, not being heard. One of the techniques is I work with like regression therapy. So we go back into a specific memory, and it might be like just somebody overstepped a boundary. So I do a lot of work with boundary works. So somebody overstepped a boundary, and then you're able to step back into the body of that, however old you were, that younger self, and you can stand up for them. And in your voice, you say, this is not okay, you know, and you really say, and when you do this, it makes me feel, which is so good. And we have to a lot of like give like special potions to the parent so they can be quiet, they can hear. And that way it's incredibly powerful. So I first got into this work because I wanted to have my own journey with emotional eating, and I wanted to release weight and feel better in my body and feel more clearer. But what I got out of it was so much. I got all of those things, but then I got out of it like being able to set boundaries better, being able to ask for what I want. Because the other thing that's connected to not being able to speak up to people is not being able to know your own needs. So a lot of times as a child, if you're ever asked like, I want that thing, I want that lolly, or I want ice cream. And if it was like, if anytime like a caregiver were like, don't be stupid, like, you know, we can't afford that, or how dare you ask me for that? You just had an ice cream however long ago. And then you think, whoo, like, so then we get these, and these are all, this is not to parent shame at all. It's kind of all well-meaning things that our parents do, but it's how we translate that in our own mind. And we think, oh, well, it's not okay for me to ask for what I really want. Mum might get mad. She might, so I don't want to make her mad or unhappy. So how dare I ask for needs? And then so this is very, very, very common in women. And then we don't really check in with our own needs. That's when we as women, or, you know, men also, we say yes to all of the things. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do it. And then end up exhausting. You don't have time for yourself or your family, doing the things that you want to do, because we're not that in tune with our own needs, and we can't verbalize that, or we can't say no to people because we're trying to please them all the time and not piss them off. Yeah,
I agree. As you talk, I think it seems like it could also be attached to identity. Because in my case, for example, I kind of was always an athlete. Like, I was always good at sports, and I was really good at soccer. Then I've run like long distances as well. I was good at rugby. And one of the things that happened in university was that I tore my ACL. I broke my ligaments in the knee. And I realized then and there that a big part of my identity, or a big part of where I derived self-worth, was from the fact that I was good at soccer. That was my way of making friends. That was my way of being cool. I am very competitive. I just love winning. My dad likes me to be an athlete, and that also made me fit, which I guess it made me skinny. So I felt good with myself. My mom was like, "Oh, you look really good." Blah, blah, blah. And then once I tore my ligament and I couldn't play sports, I'm like, who am I? And I started like gaining weight, and I'm like, I am just not worth it. I'm not cool anymore. And I had to start, like, my only other way of being competitive and feeling like I was winning was to start playing poker. And then I started reading books and playing poker, but it would just hurt me so much when my friends would invite me to play soccer, and I couldn't for like 5 years. I couldn't play, which is the thing that I love the most. And then when you take that identity concept, there's a lot of kids, and again, I know that we're not throwing shade at parents. We're not, like, everybody did the best that they could with what they had, and I'm probably gonna fuck up too. I have my 1.5-year-old, and I hope that I can have enough self-awareness to not. I mean, he's gonna have to battle his own demons anyways, but I'm obviously striving to be the best parent that I can. But when you say to your kid, you're smart, you're skinny, or you're athletic, or you're this or you're that, it seems like it's so attached to the being. Then when you don't perform under that skinny or smart or intelligent or responsible, there is shame attached to it, because it's attached to the being, not the action, not the behavior. Like when we talk about guilt versus shame, guilt is more attached to the behavior. I mean, it still sucks to feel guilty, but it's worse to feel shame, because shame is more attached to the being. Do you think a lot of food disorders and eating disorders are attached to identity as well?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And there's like, identity is really related to, our tribe also. And when you were saying, playing sports, and then you couldn't play sports, and you took it to the poker. There's like who we are as a person, that identity, as you spoke about. It's like, that's about like love of, receiving love. And if we don't receive love, like, we're ashamed, we feel shame, and shame is one of the lowest vibration. There's all these different vibrations of feelings and emotions, and shame is one of the absolute lowest of the low. The shame and guilt is so, it's like we just need to do everything we can to kind of just release that. And it's only kind of made up in our, somebody could have gone through exactly the same situation as you, but felt different. And they're like, I'm not ashamed at all. This is not nothing to do with me. I can recreate myself. I can be whoever I want to be. And it doesn't affect my own self-worth or who I came here to be. So, it's big stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that we do when I do the healings in the EFT, we go back into that situation, and we can have a conversation with that younger self as the adult also, and we go in and then tell that younger self, okay, it is okay to be whoever you want to be. You are loved however you want to be. You have done nothing wrong. That's the other thing. People think, I've done something wrong. I've said the wrong thing. It's all my fault that my parents broke up, or that mum's unhappy, dad's unhappy, and we take on that ownership. So we go back in as the adult self, have a conversation, reassure that younger self, and also give that younger self support, and tell them that we're always going to be here for you. Even if you can't rely on anyone else, we're going to be here for you. So that's a massive one also, like that feeling of bringing on so many new topics, but like that feeling of aloneness and feeling of, I don't have support here, don't feel loved, all kind of stuff. Yeah.
It just brought me back to one of the first times that I felt horrible in my life. And when I was 6, my parents divorced, and my dad moved to El Salvador. We were in Costa Rica. My dad moved to El Salvador. And then a few years later, I moved with my dad to El Salvador, and my stepmom and my sisters. And as a kid, I had a lot of asthma. And when I had asthma, my dad would take me to the doctor, and I started taking these pills when I was like 10 or 11 called meticorten. And meticorten has cortisona, which is cortisol in Spanish. How do you say it in English? Cortisona? Cortisone, yeah. And that like opened up my appetite like crazy. And I started eating pupusas in El Salvador like fucking like a insane person. And I started eating everywhere to the point that I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you are on the boundary of becoming obese. Like right now you're overweight, but you're going to become obese. I had like 30 pounds overweight. And to me, that was crushing. And when I went back to Costa Rica to see my mom and my brothers, like my brothers would bug me that I was fat, and my mom would like try to give me healthy food. I mean, they meant the best, you know, they weren't like trying to make me feel horrible, but it's just like what we grew up with. So like trying to eat healthy so that I wouldn't gain more weight. And then I would go to see my old friends that I grew up with, like, whoa, man, you're great. And I just felt like so not enough, like undeserving, you know, and I just never wanted to feel like that again. And I don't know if I'll ever. I mean, clearly I'm trying to take these courses and little things where I can overcome and have self-awareness and not derive my self-worth from being skinny and trying to overcome that skinny is good and fat is bad, which is, they're not really correlated as much. So, yeah, that I just remembered that as a 13-year-old, and I'm still battling with it in many ways.
And that's a trauma. That's one of our traumas, and we can remember that. So even if, you know, if you put on like 1 kilo or have a big meal, there'd be something in you that like remembers that time and like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be shamed. Oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. And it's like that we can have those traumas that live out into our adult life, which is hugely stressful for us. Yeah.
I feel that the stress is the worst part, because I know a lot of people, and again, I'm going back to skinny and fat, but I know, like, to me, I had these times that I look back to and I'm like, man, I ate like a fucking crazy person and I was skinny. And now, I mean, I'm okay, but I try to eat healthy and I'm not skinny. And I'm like, could it be just the stress and the guilt attached to it? Because when I was eating like anything, I was just partying, eating whatever, McDonald's, junk food, drinking, partying, and I was skinny. And I'm like, could it be just like literally the letting go and not being stressed? And then versus a person that would eat like broccoli and a salad and then like, oh my God, maybe I didn't eat this, maybe I should have ate that. And then you just feel guilty or ashamed of having like, maybe I should eat, maybe I had a salad, but maybe I should be running 15 kilometers instead of 6 today. And then it gives you so much stress that you probably gain more weight than the person who's just chilling and having McDonald's.
Yeah, totally. There's so much. And it's like that diet mentality, which was one of the, like, such a blessing after I did all this stuff, because I had grown up with that my whole life, ever since I was a teenager. Like, I was running, I was finding out the new diet thing to do and doing all this stuff. I've always loved researching new diets and doing some wacky, crazy cleanses and all of this stuff. And so it's hard to even change. And it is just a habit. It's hard to change that, but it's another habit, and like kind of doing some inner work, but also just would be like changing, start by changing the word, and then that ends up changing the brain, like the wording of why you're choosing to eat vegetables and healthy food over McDonald's, or over some other junk food. And it's like, oh, my body feels like this. This is going to be good for my body, not because it's going to be, I'm going to look hot or I'm going to be skinny. And that's when you said, I wrote this down also, when you're saying you're going for a run, like when you started to run because you didn't want to be fat. This is something an exercise that I give to my clients. It's like, why do you exercise? And you have to write down all of the benefits that you feel from exercise, and none of them can be about weight. So it's like, I feel energized, it's social, I'm in a good mood, like all of these great things that you feel, because exercise is so good, moving our body, moving energy. It's just, we just need that. We're not supposed to be so sedentary that we are right now. So that's just another way to get out of that kind of mentality of, and that's something that we can pass on too. We can pass on that mentality of, if you've had a parent, like a mum that was always on the next diet or always obsessed with her weight or something, that can be passed down. And so it's, learn from
Man, when I look back and I'm like, and it still happens to me at times. If I could just talk to my 10-year-old self and be like, dude, it's going to be fine. And I mean, I don't even know what I would tell my 10-year-old self, but clearly we all need to tell ourselves that, like, you are enough. And going back to the salad versus the McDonald's, like, to me, I have to really focus every day to be like, I'm doing this because it's good for me, not because I want to be skinny. And like the worst part is that if you're down for whatever other reason, because life happens, you will fucking fall back into those, like, whatever limiting beliefs that you had. And I can just imagine a lot of people that have gone through 27 diets and they feel ashamed that they couldn't reach that weight, or they did and immediately they gained it back or more. So they don't want to try another one, because anything weight related to them is associated with failure or pain or I'm not enough. So I really get when a lot of people say, you know what, fuck it, I'm never going to do another diet ever, and I'm going to be fat for the rest of my life. I don't give a fuck. And I don't blame them, because it is exhausting to do something to try to be enough.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And that's, and it's also because we can change, we tend to change so many things. Also, it is hard on the people that we love, also the people that are around us. I remember having so much stress around food and, going to family dinners, and they'd be like, oh, like, what can we have now? Or Kim, I made a vegetarian salad for you with rice, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually on paleo now, where I'm eating a lot of meat and no carbs. So like, and someone's like gone out of their way to make you this special thing. So it's really, I think, there was, it affected, and I was reflected back to me by some friends that like, oh God, it's so nice to go out for dinner with you now. You're not so anal and like stressed out about food and what's she eating, and I can have this, but I can't eat that, and I want this thing to myself, but I want to share that food with you because I want half of that and this and that. Like, it's stressful, and that kind of control over the thing, and we don't realize how much our actions affect those around us. But it's like we can't see out of that.
I just went to Peru a couple months ago, to visit my mom and my family with my wife and my son. And I realized that the week before, I was so stressed that I started to feel like bloated, because well, this is why I think the stress made me not process the food or whatever the process is called. And then I started to feel not skinny or like bloated. And I was so stressed about the flight because I just pictured Liam like screaming and crying for 10 hours straight on the way to Peru. And then when I got there, like comments from my family, like, oh my God, like you put on some weight or whatever, even though I haven't, but it's just like right there. And whether or not it happened, I did feel very stressed out the week before. I'm really interested in the part where you say you help people reprogram their limiting beliefs about themselves and their body so they can lose weight without cutting calories or depriving themselves of the food they love. So if you were working with a client on this, because I love the without cutting calories or depriving themselves of the food they love, because eating is supposed to be beautiful. But to me, it's never been. It's never been. I have to really focus. And what would a typical session with you look like in case some of our audience members are wanting to? First of all, I assume it can be done online. And
yeah.
And what does it look like? I mean, I don't want you to reveal any confidential information, obviously, but is it questions? Is it a back and forth? Is it like coaching?
Yeah, we start off with questions and usually this is why I don't do many one-on-ones. If we're going through something specifically for weight, and not wanting to, and getting somebody to a place where they can eat whatever they want. They don't so strict about what they want. They don't ever feel deprived of the food that they love. So there's a few different techniques. One of the most used techniques that I do, and especially this is for emotional eating, it was taught to me by my teacher, Brittany Watkins. And it's all about, so this is what happens when we're in an emotionally eating kind of binge or a stress eating, whatever is coming up for us. We're wanting to leave our body. And this is exactly what comes up with alcohol, cigarettes, any kind of addiction. So we're not happy with what's going on in that moment. And majority of the time, what's going on in that moment is pretty much a memory of something that happened in childhood, a childhood trauma. So what I get people to do is I take them back to whatever memory, and it's their own subconscious that takes them back. So we start the tapping process, and I teach them how to go back into that memory. And we go back and we reassure that little girl or little boy, that the younger self, that it is okay, whatever went down in that memory. And it's very safe. We're never going to a memory that's too traumatic, or it's always really safe. And wherever the mind takes us is the choice of that person. So, and then from that state, we're able to support them in all their little mini traumas that happened in their life. And this is why it does take time. This is why I do recommend doing, a 6 or a 12-week program, which is one session per week. So then we can look at all these different aspects that are contributing to the weight loss. And the other big technique that we do is to support ourselves with cravings. So a lot of times we have these specific foods that we go to that we want to experience a positive memory out of. So, and one that I had was biscuits, or I call them biscuits in Australia, but cookies. So cookies, I was going for the cookies, and I felt uncontrollable. Like I felt like I had no control. If the cookies were in my house, I had to eat them. I couldn't stop at just one. So what we do, we kind of take the emotion out of the food. And what we're really craving in that time, in that moment, is human connection. So it was whatever these cookies represented. And for me, they represented my grandma and my mum. We'd make these specific biscuits when I was young, and it was a happy time. I loved sharing these biscuits with my mum or with my nan. And so then later on in life, when I'm wanting to eat one of the biscuits, I'm wanting that. I'm craving that kind of, that intimate moment, that, you know, sharing, connection, love, joy. So yeah, so that's why we don't like the not feeling deprived of anything, because we're taking out the emotion. So now number one, we're being okay with the emotion, and we're figuring out that emotions aren't emergencies, which was a big aha moment for me. I was like, wow, I can actually be in my body and feel what's going on for me and be okay with it. And knowing that, you know, in this, I'm an adult now, I can trust the world around me, I can trust my emotions, and I can trust myself to handle any situation that comes through. So, so then I'm not using food to escape those emotions. I'm not using other substances to escape my body, to escape the emotions that are going on. That kind of makes sense. Yeah.
So I like that emotions are not emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just think about that. So yeah, and by that, do you mean we don't have to provide a solution all the time with the emotions and just let them pass, let them be, like observe them?
Yeah, and be with them. Yeah, breathe through them. You know, and that's when you know, you're not trying to run away from anything. You're fully in your body, instead of trying to leave your body with, even leaving your body with picking up the phone, scrolling Instagram, shopping, so many other things that, like, or keeping busy to avoid what's actually going on underneath the surface, which is like, oh, maybe I'm feeling sad right now. It's like, okay, I can feel sad. I know that this will pass. I'm not going to feel sad forever. You know, and maybe you can, like, we learn how to nurture ourselves with different things. It's like self-soothing ourselves. So I can nurture myself with a walk or breath work. I can cook something healthy for myself. I can call a friend. I can speak about it. And so it's not attached to, and that's the other thing, this word shame coming back in. Then feeling sad isn't attached, or feeling anything isn't attached to shame. Like, oh, I shouldn't feel sad or lonely. It's like, okay, it is what it is. And if we clear out these other traumas that we attach these emotions to, then feeling whatever we're feeling isn't an emergency. It just is.
I love that. It sounds like there's a lot of mindfulness and self-awareness attached to this process. In my process with Clorofila, with Caro, her name is Carolina, I realized that at 4 p.m. I always wanted to have cookies or something sugar related. And then we said, okay, she said, like, okay, but what happens at 4 p.m.? Like, what are you trying to solve? Well, what are you trying to, what's the underlying feeling, you know? And then we identified that at 4 p.m., I feel like my day is over because I have to go pick up my son, Liam, who is a little hurricane. And when I go pick him up to daycare and he comes back, it's game over for me. And as a control freak and productivity obsessed person, and someone who's typically achieved to be happy, not happily achieved, I just feel like it's done. Like my day's done. If I didn't do anything, it's done. And then I feel guilty if I work when Liam is here, because this is the only time I have with him until he goes to bed. So it's like, and then I would like stop to go get a couple donuts or a coffee or anything. And then she's like, just observe it. And it's pretty crazy. I always say this in public speaking. When you point out the elephant in the room, it diffuses the negative. I mean, it won't go away, but it diffuses it in many ways. When you know the problem, or when you know the situation, the challenge, now you can observe it, it's that self-awareness. And I mean, I still struggle with it, but I haven't done it. I don't have it as much anymore. But if I do, it's okay too, because it's not the thing. It's not me having a donut. That is like, when you attach meaning to it, it's horrible. It's literally thinking, okay, I'm having it, I will enjoy it, and these things have consequences. I mean, if I do it all the time, then I'm going to have a quality of life very closely linked to having sugar all fucking day. So, but it's not judging it. And that kind of really helped me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Your own perception of it. Yeah.
I wanna ask you one more thing, and then I want to ask you about your journey to Mexico, and then we'll close it off with the rapid fire questions. So I see this phenomenon a lot, and I talked about it with my mom on the podcast. She's a relationships coach, and she is like a fucking oracle. She's pretty good at it. And so we talked about this thing. I'm like, why? You've probably noticed this too. Why, when couples break up, they'll immediately become super hot again? Like, they'll go to the gym, they'll start eating healthy, they take care of themselves, they start meditating, they go on yoga retreats, they start doing all the things that they stopped doing when they were a couple. And I guess the question is, how much of it is it attached to eating disorders or to self-worth? And why does this keep happening and happening and happening? I mean, it would have been nice if you guys loved each other before you broke up. Therefore, you were the best versions. And maybe you wouldn't have to. Maybe you wouldn't have had to break up. I mean, maybe it was the best thing that you guys broke up. But wouldn't it have been nice if you had the best version of yourselves within it? And then if you break up, that's fine. But you wouldn't have to go through that, like, recovering yourself process every single breakup. It sucks.
I know. And I think like it can be like two reasons. Like, one of it is you're doing all these things. It's just like the intention behind why we're doing things. So if somebody's gone through a breakup and they want to improve themselves, improve their spirituality, their connection with themselves, their body, their health, fitness, if they're doing that for the reasoning of their own self-worth and attracting another partner, and like, okay, I can only attract a partner if I'm looking fit and feeling great. Or the other reason behind that could be maybe that person, maybe their partner was like a night owl and they couldn't get up early in the morning, or maybe they were like, this other person liked to drink a lot or followed an unhealthy lifestyle, and they put themselves so much into that relationship and got caught up into that kind of the cycle of unhealthy. Then they're like, now this person's out of my life. Now I actually have the space and energy to do what I want to do. So I actually want to get back meditating. I want to do those things, and like getting back to what we spoke about earlier about our own needs and what are our own needs, and can we stand up for ourselves and express our needs and ask for what we want, So maybe that wasn't, if somebody's so deep in a relationship that they'll lose themselves and they'll lose their own, what they want, what and feel, and all of that can get tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's so sad when you're like, hey, where's Jimmy? We haven't seen him in like a couple months. Nah, he started dating this girl, and everyone's like, we won't see him for a couple years. I feel like that's so sad because you stop doing the things that you love. I read this book a couple of years ago, throughout the pandemic, called The Artist's Way. And have you heard it? Have you done it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like literally a spiritual path to higher creativity. That's what the book says. I was just showing it to another friend, and it's literally recovering yourself, getting to know yourself all over again, and kind of having fun like a child would. I feel like we stop playing, we stop listening to ourselves, and then no wonder you broke up, because it was like I would break up with me. It's super fucking boring to be in a relationship with me. Like, of course, like she was gonna break up with me, because you're not even having fun with yourself. And I feel, again, it's that inability of setting boundaries, saying no, being positively selfish, giving yourself time. So yeah, and again, self-awareness. And to the topic of self-awareness, I want to hear about your experience of living in Mexico. How have these 6 years been? Have you dated any Mexicans? And what have you learned about yourself in Mexico?
So much. I've learned so much. And I feel like it was kind of breaking myself away from the mold of what everybody else in Australia was doing, what the society wanted for me. And I remember, like, before I left Australia, I had a relationship, and that was going down that road of, marriage, house, kids, all of that. And that's what I really, really thought. And I was really upset when that relationship ended. But then I got over here and I was like, wow, like this is actually what I'm supposed to do. And I remember this moment where I was back at my sister's house, and she's got a beautiful house, but it's in the suburbs, and she's got kids.
Australia.
And I remember in Australia, yeah, in the suburbs in Melbourne. And I remember putting her laundry out on the clothesline outside, and I was like, my brother-in-law's jocks, then like a little baby sock, and I was just like, I started bursting out laughing. I was like, oh my God, this could have been me, which is not, it's not a bad thing, and that's not saying that that's a bad thing about like that, whatever path somebody takes. But it was just so laughable, because I was like, wow, I thought, and this is the thing, when some relationships end, you think this is the worst thing that could have happened to me, and I wish we were back together, and blah, blah, blah. But then, a couple of years later, you're like, whoa, thank the Lord. Oh my God, like imagine my life now if that had been, So it really, we're always looked after in so many of these, so many of life's little twists and turns. We're always looked after. That's why I always have this kind of like a faith that I have to, I'm still working on, but faith that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, so, oh my God, Mexico's taught me so much. Yes, I've had Mexican boyfriends. I feel like I've been school, and it's so different.
Have you been
Mexican,
what did you say?
School,
You've been what?
Schooled in a macho, because they all say, like, they all of them, oh, I'm not macho. All right. Give me a month.
I love this. So what differences have you noticed between Australian boyfriends and Mexican boyfriends?
Gosh, where do I even start? The lateness, saying, oh yeah, I'll be there at like, I'll be over there in 20 minutes. Allow an hour at least, and then sometimes I also, for myself, when I would associate being hungry with, death, couldn't be hungry. So going out for dinners, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll pick you up at 7, like 8:30, close to 9, then they rock up, and it's like, hey, I was like, what the fuck? I've been waiting. You know, and then I have to eat something I was like, make sure you have a snack, like an afternoon snack if you're going to go out for dinner. And it's kind of, and this is what I find with men from the United States also. You take everything that they say with a grain of salt. And this is a generalization. I don't want to, like, you know, they've got, anyway, maybe veer off into some positives, but sometimes they might say things but not actually mean it.
That's so true.
Yeah. But the passion, they're very passionate. Mi vida, mi amor, mi cielo, like all of that is lovely. It's very lovely and charming, very charming, but it does get you into trouble, I think.
And what about the partying or like social gatherings? How are they different?
Well, again, starting, because I would say, you know, going around to a barbecue, if it says, you know, it's at 2 p.m., I'll be there at 2 p.m., but like majority of the people, they're not turning up until 5, 6, 7 p.m. without even saying anything. And I noticed also when I had events at my house, one time I had a Christmas event and we all kind of divvied up what everybody was going to bring. I was like, yeah, I'll be there. This one Mexican guy said, I was like, okay, well, it's like, what should I bring? I was like, well, you bring the guacamole and the chips. And so anyway, starting at 12 for lunch. 2 o'clock rocks around. I was like, the fuck's that guacamole and chips? I called the guy. Oh, I'm in Guadalajara. Like, why didn't you tell me that you're not coming? Like, you're supposed to bring the guac and chips, you know? And it just, sorry. I'm going to be like, surely you knew yesterday that you were going to be in town. So that. And I think because, like, underneath it, and it's the Mexican people, the culture here is so polite and so generous and loving. But if you invite them to an event, a party, a dinner, they say yes just to not, so that they don't.
In Australia, are people more direct? Oh, you want to come out? No, I can't.
Yeah. They're definitely, it's pretty much if you say that you're going to be there and if you're not there, people are like, what? You know, they're like really upset that you weren't there, especially if, like, I think, you know, if somebody's laid out, you know, if somebody's making dinner and they've made enough for you, they've set the table and then you just don't rock up, like that's, yeah, if you say you're going to do something, and that's such a, like, I find for a guy that's very sexy and that's very charming if he does what he says he's going to do. Like,
accountability.
Massive. And it says a lot, you know, it says a lot about everything that they're doing in life, you know?
Yeah, that's so Latino. That's so Mexican. Hey, you want to go to a sport? Yeah, man, what time? Yeah, don't worry. Perfect. Yeah, no. And then what happened? Oh, my grandma, she was there. Mi tío.
Yeah. Well, someone just rocked it because we also live in a beautiful town that a lot of people, oh, yeah, my compadre, like, just turned into, you know, just rocked into town. Oh, you only just told me 5 minutes ago. So now I get pushed to the side? Like, I don't know. Enjoy your compadre, like that. So, yeah, at the start, like, oh, yeah, okay. But then at the end, I'm like, no. Yeah. That's it.
That's amazing. The other thing that to me was a little crazy about Mexico. I mean, I lived there when I was like 14 to 17 or whatever, but that it's like so many. I mean, I lived in Mexico City, but people drink a lot. I mean, in Australia, probably they do as well, but here it's like a social thing, and like everybody's drinking and it's never ending, and it's so much eating and you never stop eating, and it's like 2 a.m. and people are still going. And you're like, when is this gonna end? But and then people are hugging you, mi mejor amigo, and you're like, dude, I just met you, no me importa. And yeah, people are very. And then what is the thing that you love the most about Mexico or Puerto Vallarta?
Well, here in PV, I love like the nature. It's going back to that feeling. It's like there's so much, but we're here, and there's a lot of ley lines. So ley lines are kind of like the Earth's meridian points, if you will. So ley lines are energetic lines, and there's a lot of crossover here in Puerto Vallarta. If you're looking at the Earth, there's a lot of like they cross over. So the energy is really beautiful, and also the mountains.
And how do you know where is the ley line, or what is a ley line?
You can just look it up. It's like an energy center from one part of the Earth to another. So there's a bunch from here into Maui. So that's why you feel it's a similar feeling if you're here that on Maui in Hawaii. So there's and also like so like the energy of the mountains pushing out towards the sea, and then the ocean coming in, like we're like in between both of those points. We're like in between the mountains and the ocean. So
does Costa Rica have a ley line?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'd have to look that up.
Because the vibe. I mean, there's a lot of people who just love it. There must be something there. Apart from amazing, good-looking people, you know? Okay. So, one last question, then the rapid fire, and then the champagne question to end it off. So, if you could recommend one thing to people trying to lose weight or overcome their limiting beliefs, apart from having a session with you, obviously, but one thing they can do by themselves, small, big, to start this journey of self-love, not emotional eating, and overcoming limiting beliefs.
Learn tapping. So that's just something they can do. It's free. You know, there's a bunch of videos online. I've got a bunch of free videos on my Instagram and YouTube, and I also share a bunch of I share one of those techniques that I spoke to you about with the cookies. I shared that on my Instagram and YouTube, and it's about like taking the feeling out of the food. That and like breathing, being okay with emotions. That's more than one thing. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What does your arm say?
La vida es un sueño.
La vida es un sueño. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, rapid fire questions here. If you want to answer quick, even better. Here we go. I lose track of time when I'm
in a session. Definitely.
What has been one of your happiest moments?
Finding my dog on the street.
Like you refound it, or you just got one and you adopted it?
Yeah. And about 30 seconds before I got him, I was telling the story about how I met this guy who rescues dogs, and I was like, I'm going to get one. And then 30 seconds later, my little dog was on the street in the middle of the road.
That's incredible. What are 3 things you would like to be doing in 3 years?
I would love to have more of an online programs that just running themselves with tapping. I'd love a stable, beautiful, romantic relationship. And I would love to have a bunch of money in savings.
Amazing. If you could invite 3 people to your home for dinner, living or dead, who would they be?
My dad and 2 of my grandmas.
Love it. Share an interesting thing about yourself that not many people would know.
Ooh. I feel like I share a lot. I love cooking. Everyone knows that. I love breath work.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Me too. I actually took a course with a guy. He's Peruvian in Germany, and 8 sessions over Zoom of breathing. And I do the exercises every day when I go to bed. Because, I mean, I feel it's the best. Like, for some reason, it makes me sleep quicker, and I love it. What is one thing you can't live without?
A dog.
What's your dog's name?
Libre.
Libre. Who is the first person that comes to mind when you hear the word successful, and why?
My sister. She's very successful at a lot of things she does. And yeah, I admire her and look up to her for sure.
What kinds of things does she do?
She is a mother of 3, but she's also got she's like a stylist also, and she's just created an online brand that she does a lot of marketing through. So it's I always see her, anything that she kind of puts her mind to, she does, and she creates and flourishes. So it's really, it's inspiring to witness.
Nice. If you had 6 months left to live, how would you spend them?
I wish that Australia wasn't, but like locking people out right now. But if that wasn't the case, I'd go back to Australia. I would see all of my family, bring my family over here. I'd spend my days doing a lot of similar stuff that I do right now, just going down to the beach, meditating, working out, I tell more people that I love them and I care about them, for sure, if I need 6 months to live. And yeah, right now, other than going back to Australia, like I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than here, which is a great place to be.
Love it. What lesson did you have to learn the hard way?
I had to learn that life's always working out for me, and that even if I have some plan in my head about how it's supposed to be, especially what we were talking about before with relationships, and I think that's like a really low point in my life of going through a breakup and wanting things to be different, but then being like, that was actually supposed to happen, and I needed to go through all of that.
Beautiful. I thought you were going to say, don't believe Mexicans when they say I'll be there at 8:00.
Last lesson: have a snack if you plan to go out with the Mexican for dinner.
Okay, and last question: if we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Kimila's life?
Celebrating the growth of business, for sure. I feel like that's the most alive thing right now, which is so crazy. Like I said this to my friend yesterday, I think all of my life I've been like, okay, this is how, like, I need a partner, need things to be this way, need like, that was always like the first bit of my goals. And so to actually change that and be focused on something else is pretty glorious. Yeah. So that's it.
Amazing. Well, this has been like a session for me, as almost. And I am so happy that we got to talk on Instagram, and we were able to do the episode. A big hug to Diana if she's listening to us. Continue doing what you're doing. I always love when, in fact, I think all of my guests really are doing great things for humanity, for the people around them, for their communities. And I think a lot of them actually, when I asked them, if you had 6 months left to live, how would you spend them? A lot of them have said, I wouldn't change much. And I think that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you so much for being here, Kimila. You're doing amazing work, and I admire you. This is incredible what you're doing. Do you have any closing remarks?
Just thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Kimila McPherson and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Ciao, ciao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.